Hello everyone, in today's video I'm going to be reviewing Son of Frankenstein from 1939. Son of Frankenstein is the third of the Universal Monster Frankenstein series. After Dracula's Daughter, Universal took a break from making horror movies, but that's when they re-released Dracula and Frankenstein. Those movies at the time showed how audiences were still afraid of those movies and how those films were still big money successes. So after the re-releases of Dracula and Frankenstein, Universal decided to make another Frankenstein film. Son of Frankenstein was directed by Roland V. Lee, and he also produced the film. This time the film was not directed by James Wales. The film stars Basil Rathbone, Bela Lugosi, Boris Karloff, and Lionel Atwell. Son of Frankenstein came out in 1939, the same year as The Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind. It also came out at the time when the Great Depression was coming to an end, when the economy was recovering. But then unfortunately, Germany invaded Poland and World War II started. Son of Frankenstein is about Baron Wolf Frankenstein, the son of Dr. Henry Frankenstein. Him and his family go to the same town and village where his father created the monster. The town villagers do not like and respect him because of being related to a mad scientist who created a monster that caused so much trauma and chaos. Baron meets Igor, who helps bring his father creation back to life. But then mysteriously, one by one, the town villagers are being murdered by the monster. Baron wants to bring the verdict to justice, but he also might face the possibility that he might be responsible for the murderers. For a third film in the series, this is by far one of the best third movies in a film franchise ever. But yet at times it's a little bit underrated because of the continuity, which I'm going to get to a little bit later in this review. What I really love about this film is that the actors and the characters in this film are just amazing, spectacular, and just flat out brilliant, just awesome to watch. Basil Rathbone as Baron Wolf Frankenstein is just amazing and brilliant, spectacular. He's just great in this role. He's very sympathetic because he really wants to make peace with the town villagers. That's what his father did. But yet the town villagers really do not respect him and they don't trust him. Even though he does follow in his father's footsteps of bringing the monster back to life, but he's not as mad as crazy compared to his father in the first movie. It's true they say, like father, like son. And this is probably Bela Lugosi's best role outside of Dracula. He is just great as Igor. It kind of surprised me he did not get an Academy Award nomination for this part of the movie. As a kid watching this, and this day, even as an adult, I always loved watching the scenes with Wolf Von Frankenstein and Igor talking to each other. When Igor explains his background story and how long he's had the monster kept in the laboratory for years when he found him. Dialogue like that always fascinates me for some reason. With this being Boris Karloff's last time playing the monster in the film, he definitely goes out with a bang, but he's not really that big a man of the focus like he was in the first two films. Basically, he's just there as the monster for Frankenstein to bring back to life. The scene when the monster is reanimated, brought back to life, when he sees Baron Wolf von Frankenstein and looks him in the face as if he has that familiar face, as if he recognizes him his father, despite Basil Rathbone really looks nothing like Colin Clive. And he looks at himself in the mirror. It kind of goes back to the first film. It was why am I brought back to life? Why would you not let me die and rest in peace? The monster in this movie is more of a second antagonist than the main antagonist like he was in the first two films. Lionel Atwell plays Inspector Crow. This character was parodied in Young Frankenstein, Inspector Kemp, played by Kenneth Mars. It's not that he doesn't like Frankenstein, he just doesn't really trust him. He's very suspicious of him, worrying that he might follow in his father's footsteps. The scene when he tells Baron Wolf von Frankenstein his story about how when he was a little kid, how the monster tore his arm apart. That is very bone-chilling, very scary and horrifying. Which begs the question, when did that even happen, like in the last two films that we never even saw that? This is where like the continuity is a little bit off and a little bit questioning. The one minor complaint I have about this film is Donnie Donnegan's character, who plays Baron von Wolf Frankenstein's son. I mean, he was a kid actor, I give it a pass, not much criticism, but I'll admit, his acting in this film was really not that good. Especially this was a time when like kid actors were not really like at their best compared to what they would turn out like later on in films and television shows. And like I said earlier, the continuity of this film is a little bit like off and flat, a little bit like questioning, like, where's the bride? How come the monster is a mute again? And also, was that the same castle like in The Bride of Frankenstein? Why does it look so different than what we saw in the last movie? This movie is very debatable on whether or not it's a sequel or a reboot, and it's really hard to say. Even for my, like, interpretation. Anytime I, like, rewatch this movie, I keep asking myself the same questions on if this is a sequel or a reboot. And a lot of people can, like, decide on their own decision whether or not they consider this a reboot or a sequel. Because you have to remember, this was, like, back in the 1930s. It's not like nowadays where we have, like, access to the internet of watching online or DVDs, Blu-rays, or VHS tapes. Back in the 1930s, the only time you saw these movies were like once in the theaters, and if you missed it, that was it. Back then, people didn't like watch movies multiple times to like notice the continuity and the errors in a movie. Not like nowadays with like the internet where they point out the continuities and the error problems. Just like Dracula and the last Frankenstein films, these films have great German expression feel-like atmosphere to them that make it so like cool to watch. One thing I want to point out about the monster is, I mean, I do like the makeup and stuff, but why was it a fur coat? Like, why did the monster wear a fur coat in this film is what I don't understand and get. Or heck, how the heck did he even get that fur coat on him? One thing I'd like to point out is that during the making of this movie, Boris Karloff's daughter, Sarah Karloff, who I had the privilege of meeting back in 2018 for the 200th anniversary of celebrating of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein novel. She was born during the making of this movie, and when Boris Karloff found out that she was born, he immediately rushed to the hospital, still wearing the makeup and the costume. I can't even imagine what that was like, going to the hospital like that, or people seeing like Boris Karloff in the Frankenstein monster costume and makeup. Probably being scared by that, thinking that he was like some crazy guy, but no. He was just some actor trying to get to the hospital to see his born daughter that he was excited to meet. When I met his daughter, she was very fun, enthusiastic, very down-to-earth, and very positive. For someone who said that, whose father was in horror movies, she admitted that she hates horror movies, and I'm such a big wuss. I also found it very interesting how she said that her favorite of her father's film was the movie Target by Peter Bogdanovich. Also, the night I met his daughter, Sarah Karloff, they were celebrating her 80th birthday. They were also showing a re-release of Frankenstein. It was also a Q&A night of asking questions and hearing some answers from her. After when the movie was over, she was signing autographs, meeting her fans, and they were also giving away free cake and wine, which was very, very nice. As I mentioned in my Taxi Driver review, that I hate reality TV shows, here's a little fact about me. A couple years ago, I met one of the Jersey Shore actors, but unfortunately, I wasn't really that thrilled or excited to meet someone who was famous on television, but yet I had no idea he or she was and why they were such a big deal, why they were so famous. Whereas meeting Sarah Karloff, aka Boris Karloff's daughter, was a real high. It was a lot more exciting for me than meeting some stupid reality TV star. And also because I met someone whose father had such a big inspiration on me, who I grew up like watching in his horror movies as a kid growing up. One other continuity I forgot to mention earlier is, how does Igor like fit in the picture of like from the last two films? He says that he was like hung up by the town villagers, but I keep asking myself, but wait, wasn't that Fritz from the first film who was hung up by the monster by accident? It's really not explained so well whether or not he's like Fritz or not. Despite the continuity errors, and also despite like the minor bad acting from the little kid, I still think this is definitely like one of the top of the best Universal Monster Frankenstein films and the best of the Universal Monster movies. This is another one I enjoy watching a lot, but I still prefer The Bride over the best of the series. So that was my review of Son of Frankenstein. Stay tuned for my next review, Ghost of Frankenstein.